Hello everybody, and a very warm welcome to this Community Connect session entitled Meaningful Engagement of the Community in TB R&D through Community Advisory Groups. My name is Pippa Powell. I'm the director of an organisation called the European Lung Foundation, and I'm absolutely delighted to be co-chairing this event with Blasini Kumar, and we will be taking it in turns to introduce the videos to you today and the different presentations and answering questions and answers, which please feel free to put in the Q&A box throughout the course of the event, and we'll be having the presenters live with us at the end to answer those questions. So this session today is looking at community engagement, and specifically community engagement in a project called Unite for TB. Unite for TB is a public-private partnership. It has representatives from academic institutions, from small and medium-sized enterprises, public organisations, and community groups. Over the next 7 years, Unite for TB will be active in 40 different clinical trial sites over 4 continents, and that includes Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America. And the goal of the project is to deliver novel phase 2 clinical trials that can really accelerate the development of TB drugs and regimens. The end goal is to find better tolerated drug regimes of shorter duration that can really help us tackle tuberculosis across the globe. So within this huge project, we have developed a community advisory group. And this community advisory group has members from all the different regions where the trials are going to take place. The members have huge experience of being involved in these kind of activities and are really there to ensure that the project has the community at the heart of everything that it does. So our session today will look at some of the challenges and opportunities that community involvement has in TB research and development. So the first presenter I'm going to introduce today is Claire Williams. Claire is one of my colleagues who works in the European Lung Foundation. She works in patient involvement and engagement, and she's leading the Community Advisory Board within this project, and she will be the first presenter today. So over to you, Claire.
I'm Claire Williams, and I work in patient involvement for the European Lung Foundation. I'm going to talk about community involvement in a new TB project called Unite for TB. I have no conflicts of interest. Unite for TB is a new IHI-funded public-private partnership. It started last year in 2021, and it will run for 7 years. It's a global project involving 31 partners in 13 countries. The main aim of Unite for TB is to speed up the development of new treatment regimes for drug-resistant TB. To do this, the project plans to provide new tools and knowledge to enable new treatment options and better science. It's developing an innovative clinical trial design and new biomarkers, which will lead to better diagnosis and testing of drugs. It will also enable the progression of new, safe and affordable treatment solutions, with the aim of providing better access to treatment for people with TB. It will speed up drug development by collaborating with other consortia. It will also contribute to the EU's ambition of being a best practice region for addressing the worldwide problem of antimicrobial resistance. Here at the European Lung Foundation, we bring together people with lung conditions and the public with respiratory professionals to positively influence lung health. We are providing the secretariat for the Unite for TB Community Advisory Group. We have a main community advisory group, which currently comprises 5 members representing global TB communities, with a 6th member due to join us soon. There is also a wider CAG comprised of other interested individuals who do not join the main CAG meetings, but who could be consulted on issues by email. The main role of the Community Advisory Group is to provide feedback and suggestions during all aspects of Unite for TB's journey using a collaborative and participatory approach. This includes all activities that involve communities and TB survivors, including, for example, co-producing educational material aimed at communities affected by TB, and advising on the implementation of community engagement at the local clinical trial sites, taking into account factors such as cultural considerations. CAG members attended the project's first AGM in Munich this year, and here you can see 2 members giving a presentation to explain the role of the CAG. This led to several requests from different parts of the Unite for TB project for the CAG to provide input into their area. This has included commenting on the clinical trial protocol, which led to changes in the protocol. When the clinical trials start, the CAG will be involved in communicating appropriately with participants, for example, on adherence to the medication regimes. The CAG have also been stressing the importance of appropriate language throughout the project, for example, not using terms such as patient and sufferer. They will also be taking part in a workshop to help identify the outcome measures to be used in the trials. Thank you.
Blessy, you're muted.
Apologies. Thank you, Claire, for that introduction. It was very good introduction to Unite for TB, and we have a lot of hope that this new trial will bring something that all of us want people with TB who are suffering with a long treatment regimen. So it is something that is very exciting, and we're really glad to be part of that. And to bring to us the community-centeredness to ensure that research and development doesn't leave communities out, and how communities are really central to that. We have our colleague Paul Sommerfield, who will bring this to us. He is also the chair of the TB Europe Coalition, a network of civil society activists across the WHO region, Europe region. He's also the executive trustee of TB Alert UK, which mainly works in UK and in India, and has also been involved in Central and Southern Africa through his work on TB. So Paul, welcome, and over to you now for your perspectives. Thank you.
In this short talk, I want to touch on some basic aspects of ensuring research that is community-centered. I have no conflicts of interest to report, and I am Paul Sommerfield, the chair of TB Europe Coalition and a member of the Community Advisory Group of the Unite for TB research program. The main recommendations that I want to mention, or processes that we would recommend, are first of all, engage with the community involved in and around your project very early on, long before preparing the research protocol. Set up a structure such as we have in Unite for TB, the Community Advisory Group, to ensure continuing dialogue with the community throughout the research from beginning to end. And if you are a major project with lots of different sites, then you ought to have one structure for the overall project, but make sure that it is repeated at local sites throughout the project. need to ensure that all aspects of the research are clearly explained to the community in a style and in a language that they can understand. And no doubt you will have a process of consent for participants in the research, and the development of that consent text should be undertaken in partnership with the community. Secondly, let's look at language. Remember, research participants are people, not merely research objects. So remember that in all your actions and materials around the project, for example, many medical research programs want lots of tests of the individual participants, but each one of those is an imposition on the person. So try to keep them to a minimum. Think seriously about how many you really need. Think also about the materials. Are they made available in the right way, at the right time, to the right people? That's where community dialogue will come into play to help you get that right. Notably, doctors and researchers find it very difficult to get away from the word patient, a word that implies passivity and dependence. As researchers, it is better that you try to talk about research participants or individuals, people, persons affected by TB, or research collaborator. Those are all terms which give more of a sense of engagement and equality. Above all, remember, doctors and researchers are scientists focused on doing good science. As such, they are not necessarily, though some of them may be, but they are not necessarily focused on and sensitive to community and individual participant concerns. So it is our responsibility as community activists to help those doctors and researchers be aware and realize that community insights will help them achieve good science and practical outcomes that will have impact and be followed through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your presentation. I think the practical tips are really well taken and emphasising the importance of the language that we use. Also, really highlighting the role that community can play within research and development. So my absolute pleasure to welcome the next Community Advisory Group member, Stefan Dresler. Stefan is a member of the European AIDS Treatment Group, which works across Europe on HIV and TB co-infection. He is obviously also a member of the Unite for TB Community Advisory Group, but he also sits on the advisory group of another IMI project called EU Pearl. Stefan's now going to talk to us about the best practices from his experience in the HIV world. Over to you, Stefan.
Hello from Berlin. The next few minutes we will talk about experiences from the HIV field and how they could be relevant for the TB field. You remember AIDS was first described in 1981. It was a new disease and there was very slow response from public health and politics. So persons belonging to the affected groups requested information, prevention campaigns, and support for research from governments. They did not necessarily identify themselves as patients, as you can see in this quote from the Denver Principles. People living with AIDS at this time wrote down what they expected in community participation from research. I have very limited time, so I can only go through some landmarks from the activism. In the United States, Gay Men's Health Crisis in New York, ACT UP, Project Inform in San Francisco, and many individuals put AIDS on the agenda. This resulted in meetings and cooperations with the CDC, the Food and Drug Administration, the NIH, and congressional hearings. In Europe, we had a few years later the situation that clinical trials would only arrive with a considerable delay. So pharmaceutical companies were running trials with AIDS medicines in Europe 2-3 years behind the United States. And in negotiations with pharmaceutical companies, public protests, we achieved that pharmaceutical companies slowly harmonized the timeline of trials between the US and Western Europe. And a final example comes from Africa. The access to antiretrovirals in South Africa was very limited because the President Mbeki in late 1990s did not believe in the benefit of HIV medicines. Treatment Action Campaign was running a civil disobedience campaign in 2002, leaking government documents, and antiretroviral access became an official policy. What can we conclude from all this? The different problems in different regions at different times require qualified approaches. I don't think there is one size fits all. And we must acknowledge that there is a lot of different initiatives, community-based organizations, which do tremendously good work in the TB field already. All stakeholders, including politicians, health authorities, academia, industry, should be aware that the participation of persons affected by a condition makes the difference. We, as a community advisory group to the Unite for TB project, we are aiming at supporting local communities, and we will try to enforce them and to strengthen their activities in the ongoing clinical trial. I'm looking forward to work with my colleagues and the local TB communities in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Stefan. That was really good. And definitely we have a lot to learn from that really strong activism of the HIV world into the TB world to make demand generation, and how communities can really play that really central role in ensuring access to not just medicines, but also to diagnostics in TB. So thank you very much for bringing that. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Tolibjon Karimov, who is a manager at the TB Partnership in Tajikistan. Tolibjon is also a TB survivor, and he's going to share with us a little bit about R&D and community engagement in the ICA region. Over to you, Tolibjon.
Hello, I am Tolibjon Karimov from Tajikistan. I am case manager in Stop TB Partnership Tajikistan. My topic in this meeting is research and development and community engagement in Eastern Europe and Central Asia region. I have no conflict of interest to report. Engagement community in research by implementing digital and adherence technology. One Impact and I Like VST. One Impact community-led monitoring empowers people affected by TB to access health and support services, claim their rights, and identify and reduce stigma. Through an innovative mobile application, One Impact encourages and facilitates the participation of people affected by TB in all aspects of TB programming to activate a human rights-based, people-centered response. In doing so, One Impact community-led monitoring combats the central TB challenge in TB response at the individual and community levels, while generating essential information and data to better understand and combat them at the programmatic level to end TB. using One Impact community-led monitoring data. Response team, 1 TB doctor, 2 case managers, community representative. Currently, we are forming a network of experts group consisting of governments and NGO stakeholders to research and review the data and harvest insights, define advocacy priorities, provide policy and programmatic advice. In November 2022, we are organizing annual advocacy meeting with participation of decision makers, MPs, CCM, NTP, MOH. Our research based on community-led monitoring is going to be a core part of our advocacy event based on which we strive to demand and ultimately achieve a necessary change. Video-supported treatment. iLikeVST is a new digital method of accompanying the treatment of people with TB at home, as well as an innovation in the field of medicine. Video-supported treatment is recommended by the World Health Organization as one of the TB treatment methods to meet the needs of people with tuberculosis. The platform consists of 2 parts, a free mobile application for the patient to record consumption videos to medicine use, and the platform used by the doctor. Videos of patients are stored on the platform, and the doctor regularly monitors the treatment of patients. Enthusiasm in adaptation of the treatment mode by healthcare providers and persons with TB. Among
Great. Thanks, Tolib John, for that presentation. It is great to be able to have a representative from Tajikistan as part of our community advisory group, but it does bring its challenges. And unfortunately, Tolib John has been unable to connect today, so won't unfortunately be here for the live Q&A. But it's really interesting to hear about how digital advancements can really help with community engagement. So thank you, Tolib John. So the next speaker you've seen already is Blessy Kumar, who's my co-chair. She's also the head of the Global Coalition of TB Advocates, which focuses on high-level advocacy and policy change. She is also a member of the Global TB Advisory Community Board and the India Community Advisory Board, which is part of the Indian Council of Medical Research. She's also been involved, we know already, in a lot of the community presentations already in this conference. But Blessy is going to talk to us now about perspectives from Asia Pacific and Southeast Asia regions. So over to you, Blessy.
Hello and welcome to this session on meaningful engagement of community in TB research and development through community advisory groups. Some of the best practices, as have been highlighted by my colleagues. I will also share best practices from the region. And this is as part of the Unite for TB Community Advisory Group. My name is Blessy Kumar, and I have no conflict of interest to report. Community engagement in TB R&D needs to become a reality at the global, regional, national, and perhaps even subnational levels. We have seen some progress at the global level with the Global TB Community Advisory Board and other groups that have formed community advisory groups. But more needs to be done at the regional and the national levels. Every place that has research that is taking place needs to have the communities engaged and involved in that process right from the start. Some of the opportunities that present to us for making this a reality are the guidelines development groups, where communities can be invited to be a part and give their expert opinion, the ethics committees, protocol reviews, and the Civil Society Task Force. All regional and national research institutes need to establish a community advisory board or community advisory group. To bring the example of India, the Indian Council of Medical Research has established a National Community Advisory Board. I am the co-chair of that, and we plan to establish sub-national community advisory boards as well that will feed into the National Community Advisory Board. National institutes should establish ethics committees that have a community member as part of that committee, as a member of that committee. Now, meaningful engagement is definitely a win-win for all. This helps to move the narrative beyond communities being just recipients of care and can be a very valuable partnership. Now, CABs or CAGs need to be part of every research planning, and they also need to be established right from the start. People-centered, rights-based always leads to better community ownership. And the community advisory boards or community advisory groups play an important role in ensuring that this happens. When the community understands better, this also means that there is better buy-in from the community. So when research is conducted and the results are available and it is implemented at the ground level and rolled out, the time taken to educate the community will be far lesser, and there'll also be better buy-in from the community. Excuse me. Community advisory groups can bridge that gap between the communities, the affected communities, and the researchers, making it much easier for communities and researchers to work together in a collaborative effort to ensure that TB research and development truly becomes people-centered and rights-based. Communities provide valuable insight and bring the lived experience and perspective to the table. Communities understand the challenges in service delivery and care at a very personal level. This experience can inform the research and development of new tools and steer the path to successful outcomes for everyone involved. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take any questions if there are. Our next speaker, who will be speaking on community engagement for better TB treatment regimens, is Patrick Agbasi, and he is also the chair of the Global TB Community Advisory Board, and he's a development practitioner with over 10 years of experience in global health, working for diverse organizations, including NGOs, UN agencies, and is also a management consultant. So Patrick, I'd like to invite you now to share with us your experience of effective or meaningful community engagement for better TB treatment regimens.
So good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I am Patrick Agbasi. I'm a member of the Community Advisory Group for Unite for TB. My presentation will be about community engagement for better TB treatment. I have no conflict disclosed. So we can think of 8 good reasons for engaging communities in research. I won't be explaining everything, I'll just mention some of them. The first being that people have the right to participate in research as more than trial participants. So this is a right enshrined in international human rights law. And community engagement also helps to ensure that the research being conducted is ethical by ensuring that research generates social value. Another benefit of community engagement that resonates especially well with research and product sponsors is its effect on recruitment, enrollment, and retention in clinical studies, as communities that feel connected to research may be more likely to participate in clinical studies. Another point that can be mentioned is that community engagement is also critical to fostering community buy-in and ownership of research, and to providing a forum for addressing myths and misinformations, something we were reminded of as COVID-19 vaccines trials opened to enrollment around the world. This slide presents several positive examples of community engagement in TB research. So the Community Research Advisory Group, PRAG, to the Tuberculosis Trial Consortium, had a seat on the protocol review for TBTC Study 31. This is the phase 3 trial of the 4-month rifampicin and moxifloxacin containing regimen for the treatment of drug-sensitive TB. Through its position on the protocol team and yearly and frequent opportunities for protocol review, the CRAG was able to ensure the inclusion of people living with HIV at lower CD4 counts, adolescents, and people with more severe form of TB, increasing the generalizability of the study and the population that might benefit from shorter treatment regimen in the future. Another example is the STREAM trial. So this is the phase 3 trial to evaluate betaquilin ability to shorten treatment for drug-sensitive TB to 9 months and to replace the injectable agents. So through regular engagement with the trial sponsor, the Global Tuberculosis Community Advisory Board helps researchers navigate a changing standard of care for drug-resistant TB and its impact on the study's control arm and its ability to recruit participants. Besides a positive example, there are, of course, negative example of community engagement, unfortunately. So this slide, in contrast to the first one, presents some negative example of community engagement in research. That is example of negative outcomes when researchers failed to properly engage communities. So a past example comes from the early HIV prevention trials in Cambodia and Cameroon, which were ultimately discontinued due to community opposition. So this early negative experience was the impetus for creating the good participatory practice guidelines intended to establish a standard for engaging community in HIV prevention research and to provide metrics against which researchers and other stakeholders could measure the progress. A more recent example is how in the DISCOVER trial to evaluate discovery for HIV prevention, Gilead did not include cis women or transgender men, an issue the community would have flagged if consulted. And actually, when it came time for regulatory review, the community successfully pushed the FDA to require Gilead to study discovery in cis women as a post-marketing research requirement. A more recent, let's say current examples is related to COVID-19 vaccine trials and the challenges researchers have faced recruiting marginalized and disproportionately affected population and combating misinformations and vaccine hesitancy in these samples. Thank you for your attention.
Great. So thanks to all our speakers, and I think we have everyone except Talib John now with us here on the panel. So welcome everybody. Everyone can see you live now. Perhaps I can kick off by asking a question that's been posted into the Q&A from one of our participants, and that was for Claire. So the question is, Claire, you mentioned that the review of the protocol in Unite for TB resulted in changes. Could you give some examples of what these changes have been?
Yes, I can. So many of the changes were around language, and I think we've already talked in some of the sessions about the importance of language. So, for example, the protocol used the term patient, which we would prefer community, but it also, one example that was given was, for example, it requiring patients to do something, and it was felt that was a little bit too directive. And really, we should be requesting or asking community members to do something rather than using that terminology. And it was also about making the protocol more understandable to trial participants. So, for example, not using abbreviations that people in the TB world, in the medical TB world, know what it stands for, but trial participants may not know. And it was explaining things in an easy to understand language. And that includes, for example, the informed consent documentation. It was felt that could be made a little bit more simple, and also that it would be available in local languages as well. One other change that was made, for example, was more detail on reimbursement, because many of the participants will be in areas with difficult economies. We're all going through a difficult time at the moment financially, and it was important that participants know what will be reimbursed before they agree to take part in a trial. And things such as, for example, would meals be covered? Would childcare be covered for people with children? And what about the expenses of carers? If somebody is coming with a carer to attend a trial site, would the carer's expenses be covered as well? It was also pointed out that insurance cover would be given for the trial period. But if people are taking part in a trial and are taking different medications, the insurance cover would need to also encompass the period after the trial, because side effects, for example, and they may not become apparent initially when people are on the drug. So it was important that that was included. And then there was a lot of detail that was changed. For example, it was agreed in the protocol that vision tests would be carried out with trial participants, but not hearing tests, and yet some of the medications may affect people's hearing. So it was that quite a fine level of detail. And finally, that the trial participants would be able to receive a summary of the results in an easy to understand language once the trial was complete. So that's just a few examples there, but there's a lot more. If somebody would like to get more detail, I'm happy to send that if they leave their email address.
Great, thanks, Claire, and thanks to all the Community Advisory Board who gave all the feedback that led to those changes on the protocol, including Paul, who went through every single acronym in the protocol, which was hugely impressive. So maybe I can just ask one question. I mean, Stefan, you've got many years experience in the HIV and AIDS community. Do you find there's challenges to get people involved in research and development? Do people even want to be engaged in this?
I think it depends again on the region. And when you look at HIV/AIDS, you see different willingness to engage in research at different times. So in the early years of HIV, when there was no effective treatment, the readiness to participate in clinical research was certainly higher than it is today in Western European countries, where you have standardized treatment options. And the urgent need to develop new treatments made it necessary that the communities would engage in the early years. For TB, I think the picture is a bit different. We have some TB treatments, but we want to improve them, and we want to improve them globally. So despite the fact that we have some treatments, there is an urgent need of the community to engage and to participate in the research. And I hope that we can support the communities and to motivate people to participate in the research and consider to take part in a clinical trial. I think the key issue here is information. We need to inform the people properly why do we need research, even if there is some sort of treatment. We need to explain what potential benefits we want to have. And we need to explain, of course, what risks they have so that they can come to a decision which is based on information and evidence. And this will be part of the role of community advisory groups as well, I think, and also with other NGOs or community-based organizations. So it's not limited to the CAG or what. It's really a community issue. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, Stefan. Thank you very much. Thank you. There is another question in the chat. So welcome to the CAB members at the Desmond Tutu TB Centre, and thank you very much for your question. I'm not entirely sure I get what you mean, so maybe the other CAB members can help me. So the question is, any thoughts about how we could go about forming CAB structures across different networks? So Blessy, I don't know what you think the question specifically means, but is this how we can sort of have a similar CAB structure over different projects and organizations, maybe sort of using the same structures and the same approaches?
Yeah, thanks, Pippa. I'll try and answer that question. Taking on from what Paul shared in his presentation, meaningful engagement of the community has to start right at the beginning, not as an afterthought. And there are already established networks of communities in every country, especially in South Africa. There are many groups that are, TB survivor groups, people from the affected communities, the TB affected communities, who are already, have already formed into formal or semi-formal structured sort of groups, whether it is community-based or whether it is non-governmental organizations. These already exist. And to engage with them right from the beginning would be really crucial. But what we have seen from our experience, especially in India, is that research institutes such as Indian Council of Medical Research, and also in South Africa, perhaps the Desmond Tutu TB Centre, should have a national CAB with linkages to other regional CABs within the country, so that it's not just vertical to each trial, but actually everybody works together to ensure that the lived experiences and perspectives of the community are reflected even as we develop research and tools and regimens, and those actually inform, and those are owned by the community. Because when you go to the next stage, we will all be stuck at demand generation, because we will be saying, well, there's no demand from the community. A community can only demand if the community is aware right from the beginning and is engaged and owns the process and is able to have a buy-in into that. I hope that's answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Blessy. That's great. I know we've not got long left on the scheduled session, but we were informed before that we had a bit of sneaky extra time due to lunch breaks. So I'm going to make the most of it and ask a couple more questions. So The first one to Patrick. So we've got a question that says they're interested in hearing your perspectives on best practices for community clinical trial protocol review based on your depth of experiences so far. So can I pass that question to you, Patrick?
Thank you, Pippa. And then, yeah, regarding best practice, I would say one thing that really worked for community engagement is to make sure to engage the community pretty early in the process of protocol reviews. So regarding the different opportunities that we had, like as TB CAB and even as a new member of the CAG of Unite for TB, it is very important for us like to have this chance to be engaged at the beginning so that we can have like a meaningful contribution in the process. And maybe one tip that I want to share is that when I started initially to review the protocol, I didn't have like a lot of material that I rely on, but in 2017 there is a treatment action group that work on an activist protocol review toolkit, and that is still pretty useful to me to review protocol. So you can have like any advice and where you have to focus from a community perspective to review protocol. So this is material that can be pretty useful in the process. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Patrick. So I'm going to squeeze in one last question to Paul. So Paul, one question is, how do you make community advisory boards more sustainable, specifically when you're in an environment where clinical trials may not be happening very regularly, so there may not be much to ask of the community advisory boards?
I think that's an almost unanswerable question in that it will depend very much on each particular situation. The question really for me is the maintenance of a community advisory board through the life of a particular project, because the way you put the question, you implied you might have permanent boards sitting around, and that can be difficult if you have not got regular work to be talking about. But I think that what is important is that whether it's at the local site level or at the overall international research level, that there is a community advisory board in place and that it is part of the normal work of the project to make sure that that board is maintained, is used, has questions asked of it, and is facilitated in responding to those questions.
Great, thanks, Paula. Maybe I can hand to Blessy to finish up the session.
Thank you very much, Pippa, my co-chair, and for all the speakers for bringing your valuable inputs into it. And as we close the session, I think we can take, some of the takeaways is that communities are not just passive recipients of care. Communities need to be meaningfully engaged because communities have an expertise to bring to the table. So it is very important to ensure that there is a space at the table. And for very long, we've been hearing, oh, but this is a very technical thing. Why should communities be involved? But the thing is, that same technical area decides on what the communities, are receiving or have access to. So I think we need to understand that all of us have a very important role to play in research and development. We need all of us to join together to bring our perspectives and the richness of our experiences to the table. And which is why we, all of us who are on the community advisory group at the Unite for TB project, are very excited that we have been really engaged right from the beginning. We have been given the space to say, sometimes we're quite forceful. As you can see, we come with a lot of experience. So there's an openness to welcome our thoughts, our inputs, and also value them enough to actually change what is already written. And I think that is very encouraging for me. I was also on the Global Community Advisory Board for many years. And it's very exciting to see that this is happening more and more. So takeaway is for all of us, wherever we are, when we hear of any protocol, any research project, question where are the communities, question what are the mechanisms to meaningfully engage with the community, question if we are getting those perspectives into the projects. And I think with all this, we can really look forward to a people-centered, rights-based TB response globally. Thank you very much.
Thanks.